Let's dive right into what is arguably the most classic developer dilemma out there. You are staring at a brand new, completely empty Laravel backend, getting ready to build out an API, and bam, you are immediately hit with the big question, which authentication system do I actually install? Do we go with Sanctum? Do we drop in JWT? Or do we bring out the heavy artillery and use Passport? Welcome to today's explainer. Consider this a proper educational masterclass where we're going to literally whiteboard out the exact architectural differences between these three tools. By the end of this session, you'll be able to confidently pick the absolute perfect fit for your specific project requirements. No more guessing. Here's our syllabus for the session. We'll cover the developer dilemma, define our three contenders, look under the hood at the mechanics, do a side-by-side comparison, talk about common vulnerabilities and pitfalls, and finally wrap up with some rule of thumb recommendations. All right, Section 1, defining our three contenders to see exactly who is who in the Laravel ecosystem. First up on our list is Laravel Sanctum. You can really think of this as Laravel's modern default. It is a super lightweight authentication system designed specifically for single-page applications, so your React or Vue front-ends, as well as mobile apps and simple token-based APIs. The main takeaway here is that Sanctum uses either secure session cookies or what we call opaque tokens, which, if you don't know, are basically just random strings that are backed up by your database. Next up is the widely used JSON Web Token, or JWT for short. Now, unlike Sanctum, JWT is completely stateless. It acts like a totally self-contained VIP badge. It consists of a base64 encoded header, a payload that holds your user claims, and a cryptographic signature. One thing to note, though, in the Laravel world, this actually isn't built right in. You typically have to implement it using third-party packages like timein/JWT-auth or PHP open source saver. Finally, we've got Laravel Passport. This is the heavy hitter. Passport is a full enterprise-grade OAuth 2 server implementation, and it's built right on top of the League OAuth 2 server. If you're building a highly complex authorization flow, or maybe you're allowing third-party developers to access your API, yeah, this is the tool you reach for. Moving on to Section 2, under the hood mechanics. Let's actually trace the authentication flow and see how these work in practice. Let's map this out using the Sanctum single-page application flow as a prime example. First, your React or Vue frontend requests a CSRF cookie from the /sanctum/CSRF cookie endpoint. Then it sends the actual login request with the user's credentials. If it's successful, Laravel issues an HTTP-only session cookie. Notice how cleverly this relies on secure cookies. Your SPA then just uses that cookie for all subsequent requests, which means, and this is absolutely crucial, the token is never exposed to local storage where it could be vulnerable. And honestly, this brilliantly illustrates the fundamental architectural difference between Sanctum and JWT. See, Sanctum issues an opaque token, which is essentially just a reference. It's exactly like a code check ticket. Every single time a request comes in, Sanctum has to walk to the back room, which is your database, look up the ticket, and find the user. JWT, on the other hand, it's verified mathematically right on the spot using its cryptographic signature. Literally 0 database reads are required. The token itself mathematically proves who the user is. Pretty cool, right? Okay, Section 3, the ultimate side-by-side comparison. Let's map out these key differences clearly. When we stack these tools up right next to each other, the deciding factors actually become super clear. Because Sanctum and Passport both require database hits on every single request, they differ massively from JWT's stateless nature. That lack of a database lookup makes JWT incredibly efficient for distributed microservices. But when we talk about setup complexity, Sanctum absolutely dominates in simplicity. It is the undeniable champion for standard APIs, while Passport sits firmly up in that complex enterprise tier. I love this quote from a developer community post. "Good software is built by solving the right problems, not by using the fanciest tools." This hits the nail on the head for our goal today. It is so easy to just over-engineer our authentication because a tool like Passport or JWT sounds super sophisticated. But remember, good software is always about solving the right problems with the simplest effective tool. Section 4, common vulnerabilities and pitfalls. We definitely need to cover the security risks and configuration traps you might run into. Let's start with Sanctum. The most crucial point with Sanctum's stateful SPA authentication is domain alignment. If your API and your front-end SPA are sitting on completely different top-level domains, this whole session cookie approach simply isn't going to work. You also have to remember to explicitly declare your front-end domain in the stateful domain's environment variable. And then, oh boy, there's CORS. We've all been there. If your CORS middleware is misconfigured and blocks that initial options request, your front-end is never even going to get the chance to ask for that CSRF cookie. On the flip side, JWTs bring their own heavy baggage to the party. The absolute biggest mistake developers make is storing a JWT in local storage. That fully exposes it to cross-site scripting or XSS attacks. HTTP-only cookies are way safer here. There have also been some wild historical vulnerabilities in JWT libraries, like the infamous alg=none attack, where the system completely fails to verify the algorithm header, letting attackers basically forge tokens out of thin air. But the biggest architectural headache of all? Revocation. Because a JWT is perfectly valid until it naturally expires, if you want to ban a bad actor or force a logout right this second, you're forced to build a stateful database deny list to track revoked tokens. Let's bring it home with Section 5, Final Recommendations and Examples. Here are your concrete, rule-of-thumb scenarios. Let's make this really simple. For the vast majority of your standard Laravel APIs and single-page applications, Sanctum should absolutely be your default choice. If you're building a Reactor View app on a shared top-level domain and you know you're going to need reliable token revocation, like logging out a user across all their devices just by deleting a database row, Sanctum is exactly what you want. It's fast, it's highly secure, and it's officially supported. However, if your architecture strictly requires JWT, then by all means use JWT. Specifically, if you are scaling into a distributed microservices architecture where dodging those database reads is absolutely critical for performance, JWT is 100% the tool for the job. If you've got 5 different independent APIs that all need to verify a user's identity without bottlenecking a central database, that self-contained JSON Web Token is a completely perfect architectural fit. And finally, reserve Passport strictly for those heavy-duty enterprise scenarios where you genuinely need full, strict OAuth 2 compliance. If you're building a massive ecosystem with multiple third-party clients, or you need to allow users to authorize external applications, think of that classic "Log in with my site" button. Then, and really only then, should you take on the whole shebang of Passport's complexity. I'm going to leave you with this final, slightly provocative thought for your next architectural design. If you choose JWT specifically for its cool stateless node database nature, but then you end up having to build a database deny list just to manage user logouts securely, well, did you really stay stateless? You might have actually just rebuilt Sanctum the hard way. Think really carefully about what problems you're actually trying to solve. Thanks for joining me for this explainer, and happy coding.